Welcome to this short interview with Veronica Larson. Thank you so much for joining and watching. As a global team, we're always very proud to celebrate International Women's Day, which was March 8th. And of course, we're always excited to celebrate Women's History Month, which takes place the entire month of March. And because of that, we are highlighting a few women leaders within MoneyGram, and today we have with us Veronica Larson, and she's going to share a little bit more about her story and her time here at MoneyGram. And so I'm going to just let Veronica introduce herself.
Thanks, Prisma. So my name is Veronica. I've been with MoneyGram for 12 plus years now, and my current role is as CIO in the IT organization, and I'm very excited to be here today.
Well, what made you choose MoneyGram in the first place?
Prior to MoneyGram, I was actually a director of product, so I wasn't in IT, and my application was an HR software as a service app. And during that tenure at that organization, I was told many times that I was not part of IT and that I should stay in my lane. And so I actually decided that I needed to find a position in IT, came across MoneyGram, and jumped at the opportunity to come here to develop a career in IT. And over the course of many years with MoneyGram, it's afforded me a lot of opportunities to learn and grow. I got my master's while still working through MoneyGram, and now 12 years later, here I am.
Wow, that's amazing. And you remind us of all the great benefits we have. What do you love most about what you do? I mean, it sounds like you sort of came here and was interested in IT, and you were told you weren't in IT in the past.
Yeah, so what I love most about what I do today, I'm tenured. I've been working in some capacity, whether it be product or IT, for 25 plus years now. So what I have found the most rewarding with my job today is that working with a variety of different team members from different cultures. I love working with talented team members just starting their career, finding opportunities for them to grow into the next roles at MoneyGram. I have an immense amount of pride watching basically the next generation succeed and take the next step.
Thank you, Veronica. I mean, you mentioned your tenure here. What are you most proud of?
So there's two that come to mind quite often. I think the first one is we had to work with a variety of Agent Connect agents to get them on the latest version of TLS. It was a fast and furious project. There was multiple checkpoints, a lot of stress because there was a very specific end date, and we were able to get that completed flawlessly. So without any impact to the organization. So that's one that always sticks out to me. The second is the retirement of Power Transact. So 12 years ago, when I first started here, I was actually hired to bring AgentWorks to life. I changed positions multiple times throughout the course of the 12 years, but in my latest stint as CIO, the Power Transact sunset was actually implemented by my technical support teams. And it was so fun to see that come full circle and come to fruition. So many years in the making, and a big accomplishment for MoneyGram folks.
So I'm gonna go back in time now. I know that, we're very proud to have you as part of the company leading our efforts. And, when I think of Women's History Month, sometimes we don't think about the past, but,
Yep.
when I was thinking about everything you've mentioned, what did you want to do when you were a little girl?
So when I was very young, I actually wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write fiction novels, and that was the path I wanted to set forth. I think it was a bit more of a daydream than a reality. But however, as my children grow and leave, I think there's an opportunity for that to become a hobby.
Yeah, and how did what was your professional journey before MoneyGram? I know you mentioned a little bit beforehand.
Sure. Right out of college, I actually, it was back in the dot-com days. So I actually worked for a number of dot-coms. It was all in the HR industry. So it would be background checks or psychological assessments, all from an online aspect. But the .com bubble burst back then, and we actually got sold a number of different times. So I switched to different HR technology organizations before I landed at MoneyGram.
And I asked those questions because I was thinking of, we have a lot of younger women in roles at our company. And so, I'm just thinking, well, think of your younger self and, the past. And what advice would you give younger women at our company?
So I think the first thing that I would advise them is that anytime you're presented a new challenge, whether it's or a new project or a new role, say yes. Even if it's not in your wheelhouse or you doubt your abilities, you can learn and grow into the role. There's been so many times that I was given a special project, new challenge, or a new team that I just didn't have the background in, and I had a lot of self doubt. Can I actually do this? Over the course of my career, I've actually learned that each and every one of those situations actually turned into a real learning opportunity for me. And what invariably happens over the course of time is that that experience compounds over the course of many years, and I grow as an individual. So even though it may be scary, take that first step. You can always change paths, right? But try it and see if you like it. There are things in roles that I've had over the course of my tenure, prior to MoneyGram, at MoneyGram, that has really shaped who I've become.
I can definitely relate. I think we're definitely in places where we want to say yes to new opportunities, and MoneyGram has been a space that, at least for me, that has definitely provided that. As far as like favorite movies or favorite books, I know work is a huge part of our daily lives, but I know that you mentioned family, and I wondered if you had any books either that were related to your professional development or even just for fun. Any favorite books or movies?
Yeah. So if we think about movies, I really like movies that have a twist to them. So I don't have a specific favorite movie itself, but like probably more of a genre. So if you think about like Jordan Peele's Get Out or Us, or if you think back to older movies like The Usual Suspects or Sixth Sense, they always have a twist and there's always a surprise. And I love that about those types of movies. When I think about books, I'm an avid reader. I wanted to be a writer, so I'm an avid reader. I don't love any specific genre. I love a good horror book, whether it be like a Stephen King or the classics like To Kill a Mockingbird. I almost named my daughter Harper. I love science fiction, but one of my favorites when I think about reading and novels is The Tipping Point from Malcolm Gladwell, and how things become viral, whether it be a product or a ideology, etc. So I think that's one I come back to over the course of every few years just to reread.
Well, that's a great suggestion. In terms of hobbies, I know that you said reading. I mean, when you mentioned Stephen King, I said, well, those are huge books, Veronica. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you spend a lot of time reading as a hobby. But any other hobbies? I know that I won't ask you your morning routine, but if you want to share any of that, we'll listen.
Yeah, so my hobbies outside of work and then my morning routine are really going to be centered around my kids. I have a now 16-year-old and I have a 10-year-old, and they're both very active. So they're in soccer, track, debate, speech classes, and they keep me busy. So in order to have that time with them outside of work, I do a lot of volunteering for their sports teams, help manage tournaments and stuff like that. We love to travel and explore as a family. So I think those today are really my central hobbies outside of work. Um, in regards to my morning routine, because my children are a little bit older, they're a little bit more self-sufficient. It's not like when I had toddlers and I had to get them to daycare while trying to manage conference calls and things of that nature. So my mornings are spent probably reading a little bit with coffee and then right to work. I'm an early morning riser, so I'm usually online by 6 a.m. So right prior to that, I do my reading, whether it be, you know, different news articles, or a book, and coffee, and then I get to work.
Coffee is a must,
Coffee is
Veronica.
a must,
Yeah.
absolutely.
In terms of, um, allies, that we have the opportunity to work with so many different people, not
Mhm.
all women, and, any advice for allies and how they can support women in, at MoneyGram or in their lives?
Yeah, I think, just talking to the women allies out there, I think the first thing is just to understand perspective and where that person is coming from. So much has occurred over the last few years since COVID. How we work and where we work, has all changed. And it was a lot. And, for a lot of women in the workforce, and millions of women have actually left the workforce. It became too much to juggle home, family, work, so on and so forth. So understanding perspective, it can take a lot of different shapes and forms. I know, if you have a fellow colleague who has young children, they might be doing that drop off or pick up for childcare. Maybe try to respect that time. I know firsthand how hard it is to try to drop off at daycare. I got the toddler. I'm saying goodbye. I'm trying to join a conference call. It is crazy and a little bit hectic. Or maybe that mom gets that emergency call from school where you have to drop everything because someone is sick. I think it's absolutely okay to make sure that we, respect that time, and also make people aware of that. So understanding where they're coming from. I'm in a little bit different phase of my career now that my children are grown, so I don't have those restrictions. But it's always good to know, where women are coming from, right? So what is their background makeup? What works for them when it comes to respecting their time, both in work and outside of work.
Yeah, that gives me a lot of hope in terms of, our lives changing and still being able to be successful in the corporate space and, in just all aspects of life. Uh, in terms of success, I know that this all prompted going into that conversation. How do you define success?
So for success to me is really being fulfilled. Like at the end of the day, am I content and happy with the progress that I've made? It doesn't have to be the accomplishment of a goal, but just moving the needle a little bit closer to the goal. And did we make progress is really how I define success, because I look at it as a day-to-day thing, not, um, you know, not just the end state of fulfilling a set goal or accomplishment. I look at it as incremental, and am I working towards that, end state? So for me, I do a lot of self-reflecting to see, are we making the progress that we need to make to accomplish X, Y, or Z? And if the answer is yes, that is how I feel like successful and how we've made it. So it's not the end state. It's a little bit of the journey.
I love that. I love the journey aspect of it because you might have bad days in there, right?
Yes, absolutely.
What factors do you think, you mentioned a little bit in terms of like daily life, right? That,
Mhm.
you were doing drop off, it's hard, jump on a call. But what other factors do you think impact women, ability to lead others? Or maybe what are things that we could do to be better leaders?
There are a number of factors that prohibit access, right? It's really about access to education, training, mentorship. And the company that you work with, do they provide, higher level education credits and funding for that? Do they provide training? Do they pair you up with mentors? And for MoneyGram, and in my experience, all three of those boxes are checked. I got my master's through a program at MoneyGram. I've taken training through MoneyGram. I've been given mentors through MoneyGram. I think, not having those things, within an organization would actually impact a woman's ability to actually take the next step, and raise their hand to become, the future, leaders at the organization. I think women tend to be a little bit more risk adverse, less assertive. We often sit back. So having an empowering culture that provides access helps combat that. In addition, I think other factors like some organizations really lack flexibility, and it's really hard for women to juggle family commitments and work, and sometimes they have to choose. And I think MoneyGram has fostered a sense of flexibility throughout our organization that has led for women to become less risk adverse, to raise their hands and take that next step.
Yeah, definitely. To celebrate the history part of Women's History Month, which we know is what we're celebrating, is there a woman in, in history that's inspired you, or maybe, and it could be, you know, anyone.
Sure. So right out of college, for my undergraduate, I actually had planned on going to law school. Took my LSAT, plan on going to law school, and I didn't actually go down that path. I had one of those moments where I'm like, that's not what I want. But over the course and tenure of that time, for me, my hero would have been the notorious Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG, in her dissenting opinion. She was really an advocate for gender equality and women's rights, and she really helped pave the way for women leadership. She advocated that we needed, a spot at the table, so to speak, when any decisions are being made. So for me, it would be RBG.
I think she's a lot of our favorite.
I think so. Yes.
I love that. Well, we're gonna wrap up. I know that I have enjoyed, learning more about you. Do you have any final words or any other comments or advice or anything you want to share?
I think that I think I made mention of this prior, but really, the scariest part is taking that first step, whether it be a new role, new project, etc. And for women, I would love for them to continue to raise their hands, not have that self-doubt, and be less risk adverse. I think MoneyGram is a culture where we learn from mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes, and we learn from them and we grow. And this is the right environment to take those next steps. So I think if I look back to my former self and some of the anxiety that I had in regards to taking on new opportunities and roles within the organization, and outside of the organization, I think that I would tell my former self to not worry so much.
Well, that's great advice, and I think we can all, find peace that we're in an organization that supports our journeys and our leadership, and make sure that we're having an inclusive place to work. So thank you, Veronica. I know that I learned a lot about you, and I'm just so, excited to meet you and get to learn more about you. I know that we don't always all see each other because we're in different locations. So wanted to thank you for your time today, and just tell our employees that there are resources on Connect. You can read more about Women's History Month. There's some inspiring talks, including this one, and you could check out all the resources that are available. And of course, feel free to reach out to me, Prisma Garcia, Social Impact Strategist, if you have any questions or would like to volunteer. And I enjoyed my time with Veronica. Veronica, thank you, and
Thank you.
we'll see each other next time.
Thank you.